All right, welcome back, 49ers fans. I hope everyone's taking care and doing well. I have a very special guest I'm excited to introduce to you today. Legendary 49ers photographer, someone who's a real searcher. You might have noticed his famous close-up photographer, the black and whites of the San Francisco 49ers. He's been shooting the team for decades. You've seen those low-angle shots from Joe Montana and Steve Young all the way up till Jimmy Garoppolo, George Kittle. His work has touched sports and music, lifestyle, fashion, politics. I'm really excited to introduce a legend and a close friend, Michael Zagaris. Mike, thank you for being here today. Thank you so much. How are you doing?
Dylan, I'm just hanging, just like you, man. It's just another day in, I want to say paradise, but maybe another day in Pandemicville.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a different lifestyle we're in, but it's great to get your perspective kind of on everything. It's been great to link up. We're living in the same city now and dealing with it all. And it's funny how we're talking virtually, but I'm in the inner Sunset. You're in the lower Haight, I believe, still.
Yeah, separated by Kezar Stadium.
How long you've been covering the team?
I've been covering the team officially since 1973, but I started going to games in 53, 54, and started, making my own passes, probably 1962, 63, getting on the field that way. So it's been a while. It seems like I've done it all my life. I was 1 year old when the team had its first game as the San Francisco 49ers. So it's been a lifelong, I don't want to say job. It hasn't been a job. I feel like, it's been a lifelong play date.
All the way down to Santa Clara now, and, rock and roll all the way through there. One of my favorite stories from you is how Eric Clapton was one of the first to hire you. I was able to see your vault in your apartment here in the lower Haight. Some amazing photos, some amazing stories there. But yeah, speaking of your journey with the 49ers, love to kind of go chronologically here and talk about this most recent one, the Super Bowl. What number was it for you?
My first Super Bowl was 11. I shot Raiders, Vikings for Rolling Stone. Missed 12 and 13 as far as being there. And then everyone after that I shot. For the team when I was with them, the Raiders would hire me when they'd go. And then for a long time I shot for the league. And the last probably 12 years when I wasn't shooting for the team, and I wasn't because the last time we went was 1994 season, I would shoot for Getty Images.
And
I don't know how many that is. I'm bad at math.
Well, were you expecting to shoot another 49ers Super Bowl?
Honestly, I was hoping, but you never know, because it really, and you can have the best team in the world and not get there. You can have the 8th best team in the league, and through any number of things from lack of injuries to ball bouncing the right way to everything, falling in place, you can end up going. I've said for a long time, not just in football, but in any sport, the best team rarely goes all the way. I thought this past season was magic for us in every way until the last 7 minutes. And then, all of those good things that both we did as a team and things that just kind of happened because of destiny and fate and, the gods, or however you want to spin it, turned against us. We won 5 games on the last play of the game. That is amazing. And those were all in the last, month and a half of the season. So that's pretty incredible. I remember, when we're on the road, I would always take the last bus in because I don't like to get into the locker room too early, because even though I'm not playing, it's game day. I don't know if nervous is the right word, but you have these feelings, and I want to be able to absorb what's happening around me with the players, but not get there too early where you're there literally walking around kind of looking for something for 2 hours. But this game, I got there early. I got there before the players did. And then the first couple buses arrived, and there were probably 20, 25 guys on them. I remember Jimmy was one of the first people that got up, came through where the equipment was to the training room. And we had a lot of time to kill. And maybe it took 25, 30 minutes. He was walking around, talking to people, then went to his locker in various states of undress. I remember he was cutting his shirt, and I'd taken a few pictures, and we were talking. And he asked me at one point, he said, Z-Man, what do you think about today? I said, I never try to think and project. But that being said, I feel good. He said, and I said, this team, this has been a really great year, Jimmy. This has been magic. And he goes, yeah. And I said, in a lot of ways, it feels like 81. And I said, because we started that season and 500 would have been good, or maybe a game over 500. But I said, we kind of started slow. I said, then we killed Dallas, and we won every game. And then it was all of a sudden, we're in the middle of the season. It's November. And people are like, who are these guys? And we go to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. And I think a lot of people thought then, okay, now we're going to see who the 49ers really are. We beat the Steelers. And that's when even we knew, it was like, hey, nobody's going to stop us now. And we went right through to the end, and it was magic. And we won the Super Bowl. And I said, you know what? That year, I'll bet there were 5 or 6 or 8 teams better than we were. But I said, we put it all together. And I said, we had that camaraderie, and we had for lack of a better word, Jim, we had that magic. And I said, just like this year, I said, and he goes, Z-Man, I don't know. He said, I wasn't even born then. I thought, oh God. But yeah, we had last year was an amazing, amazing year in so many respects. And I love that team. I love the guys. I love the energy. I mean, the coaching staff, everything came together. It was special.
So the magic is one of the reasons I love talking to you about football, because again, perspective, you've been around, you've seen so much of it, not just with sports, but with, iconic musicians and politicians and people like that. So where does it originate from? Did Lynch and Shanahan have anything to do with it? Is it Jimmy? Where does it come from? Is it kind of is it things coming together that kind of makes it happen? Timing? Like, what do you think?
I think it's a lot of things. I mean, I think for lack of a better word, metaphysics is involved. I think Jed hiring Kyle and John Lynch, when he did, that was the beginning of it. And they had a plan, and they put it into perspective. They slowly built. Getting Jimmy when they did, the way they did, that was another piece of it. Getting Bosa, having players that were number 1 draft picks, slowly, gradually learn and mature together. And when you're doing all those things, we had a lot of cap room because people were coming and going. Nobody was making a lot of money. We had number 1 picks. They started to mature. When all of that happens, the way the league is set up with the salary cap, once you start to really put it all together, you have a relatively small window where you can really keep all your pieces and win. And you've got to hope in the midst of all that, you don't have key people going down. You can have talent, but when we say chemistry, that's a nebulous term. You can't trade for chemistry. You can only hope that you have it. That too is kind of a metaphysical magic thing. Will the coach relate to the players in a way where all of that combined with the talent can translate into winning? How often do you have a good charismatic coach be able to get along and interact with a GM who's also good? How often do you have an owner that will let all of these things happen? Even with Jed, people forget when Jed basically took the reins and started making decisions. He was a young guy. He was learning. He's still learning, but for us to be where we are now, we had to go through a lot of the stuff that at the time wasn't fun, wasn't pleasant. It's like, yeah, welcome to real life. That's how you learn. And I think everybody, regardless of whether they're in sports or in business or your personal life, you learn a lot more from adversity than you learn from success. And I think we're where we are now because of all of those things that started with Jed York hiring both Kyle and John Lynch, and them having the time and the acumen to put together the players they put together and have everybody not only mesh, but have the good energy. And you know what? Every year, even if you have just 4 or 5 people leave and new people come in, every year the energy is a little different and you never know what it's going to be like. So, that's why at the end of the Super Bowl, I was crushed. The players were crushed. I mean, when you lose anyway, it's not good. When you lose like that, it's like, it's so deflating. But they're young. On the plane home, by halfway through the thing, guys were starting to talk again. And there's a feeling of like, hey, you know what? We're just beginning. And in many respects, we are just beginning, but each season is its own separate entity. I knew that physically, talent-wise, we could be even better this coming season, but we'll have a much more difficult schedule. We're not going to be sneaking up on anybody the first half of the season. We may not be, as fate would have it, win 5 games on the last play of the game, the last part of the season. All those things. We may have a much worse record, but win the Super Bowl, you just don't know. And you have to play it. And you don't know how the chemistry of the new players coming in. It's all kind of up in the air. But this is, you know what? You would have told me this 30 years ago. I go, we're going to kick ass.
It looked like they were going to win. Did you think they had it in hand?
No. I mean, I thought, somebody said to me, maybe it was Rob Tringali, who was shooting for Sports Illustrated, I think. We were in the end zone. It was second down, 2 plays before they hit the pass to Hill. And Tringali goes, wow, it's going to be great, man. This will be your 6th Super Bowl win. I said, hey, I don't want to hear that shit. We haven't won anything yet. There's plenty of time on the clock. And 8 minutes, that's a lifetime. Then it was third down. Third, and they had a long way to go. And I remember the play started. I was on my stomach. I wanted a low angle to, hopefully get a sack or something. And I remember he went back, and as he let go of the ball, Buckner just killed him. And then I looked downfield and I was like, oh, I couldn't believe he caught the ball. And I didn't have a good feeling. I at that point, I didn't think like, oh, it's over. But I thought, oh man, this is, it's like if you're in a fight, you're ahead, and all of a sudden you're on the ground and there's still like 3 rounds to go. And you're thinking, oh shit, this is a throwdown. And when they hit the pass over Richard, I thought, oh man. And then we couldn't move. And it's hard when you're watching because you still, and even when we got the ball back, we had a couple opportunities. That ball that Jimmy threw, I can't remember who their tackle was. He leaped up and he tipped the ball with he doesn't make that play. That's a completed pass to Kittle, maybe for a touchdown. Mm-hmm. And that's just how the game goes. It's life's kind of like that.
And do you see, I mean, obviously you're not a social media guy, but do you see the headlines, you see the conversations that are being had about Jimmy Garoppolo following the Super Bowl?
We're coming home. We land in San Jose. I know I wasn't going to go in the next day when for the physicals and all that. So I'm not going to see a lot of these guys for probably till April. And you're saying goodbye. And now I get in my car, and I rarely ever listen to sports radio because, honestly, to me, have a life. And a lot of the people that call in, whether they're our fans or Giant fans, or, my baseball thing is the A's fans, when they're winning, guys are like, and they're fans, and good for them. They're losing, you hear some dumb shit. And so I'm starting to drive, and it's all negative. The coach, we need a new quarterback. But it's also, it's fans who, most people think of this. You're in a job that at best you tolerate, at worst you hate. Often in a relationship that there's not a lot of love left now. And so you put your energy and your hopes in your team. And that's almost even bigger than you. And when they win, it's all about you and your team. But when you lose, they fucked up. Fuck them. Like, it's like almost, finding your wife slept with your best friend. And it's like a personal betrayal. I get it, but it's like ridiculous. And, the players are all trying because, nobody wants to lose. And Jimmy had a great year. And he didn't make the play at the end. He almost did a couple times. It's not boxing. It's not tennis. It's not just you. Everything has to go just right. We didn't that game.
One of the players I think it was toughest for, and we could probably all agree here, was Joe Staley. That game was probably toughest for him. And I wanted to talk to you about him and his career and what it meant to the 49ers. And you were one of the few that saw him arrive and saw him leave. Joe retired this year after an incredible 13 seasons with the San Francisco 49ers. That's something we don't often see in the NFL anymore, is a player, first round pick, being drafted and spending all of his entire career with one team. And having a really great career. So just wanted to get your thoughts on what his impact was on the San Francisco 49ers franchise and what his departure means.
First of all, he was a consummate warrior, and he was a team player. I mean, he was beloved in that locker room. He showed up every day, gave 110%. The fact that he had been there as long as he had, I mean, he had seen a lot of players come and go. He was there initially. We weren't very good. Then we had those, 2 or 3 good, if not great years with Harbaugh. and then we went down again. And his last couple years, he was playing with some pretty tough injuries. And I didn't even realize until I saw the Chronicle a week after he had retired that he had had those issues with his neck. And during the game with the Chiefs, at certain points, he couldn't even feel his arms. And a couple doctors told him probably a month after the season ended, he would probably, if he wanted to continue to play, there was a possibility, probably a probability that he'd have to have spinal fusion, meaning he couldn't turn his neck. And, that's heavy duty anyway, regardless of who you are and what you're doing. But if you have two young kids, and when you're in your mid 30s, you may be old as an athlete. You're still a young man, and you've got hopefully your whole life, 50 or 60 years in front of you of moving around vibrant. And it, that's why he stepped away. So he made a lot of sacrifices. For him to come back, not just this year, but last year from the injuries during a season that he had, that to me, that is a man. And it transcends his ability. And I mean, he worked all the time. He had great technique. He was always sharing what he had with his other players. And watching him and McGlinchey the last couple of years, I loved watching him. And Mike went everywhere with Joe. And I think he was morphing, and Joe was mentoring him, and he was really taking it all in. But I think too, with Joe was reveling in being around McGlinchey. Hey, this is like I was when I started out, and the enthusiasm. It was great watching him, and different players would come to him, not just offensive linemen, to talk to him and get his insights. So he's going to be missed. I think Trent Williams, he didn't play last year, but the player he was before he stepped away, I think ability-wise, we're not going to lose pure ability. The fact that he had played in Kyle's system with the Redskins for 3 years, that's going to be a big plus. How he integrates, I mean, honestly, who knows? And that's all. And that's what I mean. Every year when some people retire, some people sign with other teams, some people, a young guy comes, whether it's a free agent or drafting and beats him out, that changes subtly, or sometimes not so subtly, the chemistry. We'll see what happens.
So when you think of Joe and you think of maybe some moments with him over the last decade plus, you and him, any memories, any moments stand out that you would mind sharing?
What I always, like, before the game, at some point, I'd always go in front of his locker, and he would always, I mean, sometimes on the road, he and McGlinchey were always together. And when you come back from pregame, then you've got like 15 minutes, and then it's football time. And if you've ever played, those are the times when you really are. You're sick to your stomach. Some guys are, and you're thinking. I mean, some guys walk around and they're talking shit, and they're trying to fire themselves up. Other guys are really quiet. Some guys have their headphones. It's like getting ready to go into a fight, where no matter what anybody's saying, or hey, you're going to kick this guy's ass, it's like. And he would be like that, but I'd kneel down in front of him sometimes, and sometimes just shoot, try to be invisible, or sometimes he'd take some tape and throw it, or he'd like go make faces, and sometimes he'd go like, "Hey, was it like this when you're like kneeling in front of Keith Richards?" And he'd want to hear some rock and roll stories. So it was always a little different, but it was like, this guy's your roommate, he's your brother. And that was just something we had. And you know what? I'll miss that. And he'll miss that. Not just so much with me, but all the other players. I think the hardest thing as a player in any sport, when you step away from the game, you don't miss the practices for the most part. You miss the games, But more than anything, you miss the camaraderie. You miss being in that locker room or clubhouse every day with your guys, where you're talking sports, you're talking women, you're talking rock and roll, your boys. It's like being in high school. It's like never having to grow up. It's being perennially young. And you know what? You could be chairman of the board of Boeing, or, you know, the biggest corporation, or, you know, somebody that's making, you know, $1 billion on Wall Street. Fuck that. That's just money. That's, you know, and that's power. I mean, to me, that never meant anything. Being with your guys and being young and being in something together. I imagine being in combat, being in Iraq for a year with your buddies, trying to stay alive and all that. Different but similar. It's something shared, and it's something very special. And I think when you step away, no matter how successful you'll be in life, you'll never again have something quite like that. And I think that's very special.
Yeah, that's really well said, and I think you're exactly right. I think they're really going to miss his levity and the leadership. And I want to know if there's a leader or a player. This team has a lot of youth on it right now. Is there anybody that stands out to you as that next leader?
You know, honestly, I'm not there every day at practice and the meetings. So, I mean, I could tell you what I think, and I could be way, way off. I mean, George Kittle is a presence. Jimmy's a presence. Richard Sherman's a presence. I mean, what Richard did when he came in, he's amazing. An amazing human being, even more so than a player. But he's a warrior, and he's one of those people, when he talks, you stop and listen, because you know he's been there. You know, and he was, when he was with the Seahawks, I won't say I hated him, but it's like, fuck this guy. that rant after he batted that ball up that Crabtree tried to get. I mean, I thought every time we play them, I hope we beat them by beating him on the last play of the game, and it'd be hard not to get it going in the end zone and go, yeah, boom. But when he came to us, he's the guy that you love the most. He's the guy you want to have on your side. His passion, his knowledge, the fact that he lives what he talks about. And he's, you know, he's one of those people you want to go into battle with. He's the real thing. So he's a leader. Now, how, you know, Richard won 2 more years. I mean, who knows? I mean, he came back with a devastating injury, that would finish most people's careers, and flourished. Bosa could be, Nick could be a leader, leading by example. I mean, he was quiet, but as they like to say in baseball, he let his bat do his talking. And every year, you know, it's a small window. Most guys, if they play 4 or 5 years in the league, that's a lot. And so you've got to be there for a while, and you've got to be good, and you've got to have that intangible. So the guys I mentioned, those are people that are obviously have the intangibles. There are other people that if I were there every day, I'd go, hey, this guy here. But it starts at the top. It starts with the coach. And our, John Lynch, who he's not far removed from playing. You can tell he's still a player too. I mean, he's down on the sidelines before every game, and then he comes down from the press box with about 6-7 minutes left in the game, and he's on the bench. And he's like he's pumped up and he's pumping people up.
He's ready to get after it.
Yeah, and you know what? They've got a great thing there. It's fun to be around those guys.
So they this past week they announced the NFL schedule. 49ers schedule came out with that. Kind of wanted to talk about expectations for the 2020 season and get your honest opinion given the climate. You know, we're Zooming, we're home, we're in the middle of a pandemic. What are your expectations for the 2020 season?
Well, I mean, this is me. I'm not in Santa Clara. I can't speak for the club. These are really crazy times. I understand the league coming out with a schedule, the commissioner with directives for the teams to follow. You have to, whether you're a team, whether you're a business, you have to have a plan. You have to prepare. In this case, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm assuming they've got 2 or 3 or 4 plans, depending on what could happen. Nobody really knows. We're in uncharted waters, not just as a team, as a league, as a country. We're in uncharted as a planet, as a species. Nobody knows what's going to happen with this. Nobody knows what the economic impact is going to be above and beyond the virus. What it'll be like if there's a second wave. That's a big thing, I think, with the team and the league. What do you do if one player comes down with the virus? Do you isolate him and continue? What if 3 or 4 do? What if 3 or 4 on one team, one on another, and then nobody else? How does the league go? I'm saying these things not knowing what the answers are. Do you play half the season with no fans and then some fans? How does that work? How does that affect the games? How does going into a season, assuming that nobody really gets sick and you don't have to shut it down, how do you go into a season with no minicamp, with no OTAs, was starting and with all of your players that a lot of them would stay around the facility for most of the year. Everybody's dispersed now. Unless you know, like the Bosas, their father owns a gym. If you don't have that hookup, you're basically, as Ricky Henderson used to say, I'm doing my prison workout, push-ups and sit-ups, which isn't the same with all the things. How do you keep in shape running wise? What shape is everybody going to be in? And when I say everybody, I mean not just our players, but around the league. So when you say, what do you think going forward? I haven't, when I first saw the schedule, my thought was, oh yeah, I like this city. This is going to be a tough game. And then I suddenly stopped myself. There are so many variables. It's hard for me to even, I went, oh wow. And then I suddenly thought, as if, well, I don't know. And I don't know when we're going to start up. And it's the same with baseball. I'm heard with baseball now, they want to start the second week of July. And they're moving forward. I know some of the coaches are starting to get together and, but what will they do? What does this mean? The conversations they're having privately, I'm sure, are very much like this. And the more people involved, the more fragmented it is. And, there's some people who go, no, this is not going to be a problem. We're going to do this. And other people are going to go, well, what about this? What if this happens? And some people are, wildly optimistic about everything. And other people are very pessimistic about everything. And then they're the people in between. I, as a U.S. diplomatic history professor of mine once said, we're in a period of watchful waiting. And that's kind of where we are, both in terms of sports and as a society. And with a pandemic, maybe as a species.
And just for some fun, let's say that the season does proceed and maybe things turn and we have a season. You looked at the schedule. What did you make of it? And reflecting on the season the 49ers just had and what you've seen from previous Niners teams and previous NFL teams, what do you gauge of their makeup? How does a team like this rebound from a Super Bowl loss like that?
Any number of things can happen. We have a tough schedule, sure, but we also have a good team. If we can keep the nucleus we have, if we can stay relatively injury-free, relatively so, in a long season, nobody's going to be injury-free forever, but keep the key people playing on the field. If we can continue to get maybe not as many breaks as we got last year, but most of them. And most importantly, if we get down the stretch and we're winning and we have momentum and we're healthy, we can win the Super Bowl. But there are a lot of things. And I'm like a lot of fans. I looked at the schedule myself and I was going like, yeah, win. Maybe a loss here. I do that just to amuse myself, knowing it never goes that way. So I don't know. I'm just kind of like, it'll be good for the season to start and then to start playing. And if there's an unexpected loss, then you go, okay, what have we learned from this? Or what's going to happen? Anytime, especially when you're good, anytime you lose, there's always like, okay, what does this mean? Or so-and-so, we should have done this. It's not like that when you suck, when you're a 2-14 team. Then you're just kind of like, so it'll be an interesting season, to say the least. If we have this season, I hope people can stay within themselves and celebrate the fact that we even have a season and then go from there. But people have short memories.
Well, thank you, Z. This was really great. Just so much perspective, which we sought out. I hope everyone really enjoyed this. Z-Man is one of my favorite artists, my favorite philosophers. I've enjoyed his work for so long. Z, you want to tell everyone where they can find your work?
Rock and roll wise, you can go to Morrison Hotel or Rock Paper Photo. And I'm telling that to people that have so much money that even with this pandemic, they're not adverse to making a discretionary purchase.
It's fine art, so it's an investment.
I don't think many people are going to be buying pictures, but if they are, they can get rock and roll things there. If you want to buy sports pictures, football or baseball, I don't have a website. I sell limited editions of things as fine art. You can just email me at z_man@sbcglobal.net. And then, we can discuss it.
And you can get a big look at Total Excess, which came out 2016?
2016. Few copies available now. I think Amazon has a few left. I always tell people you can read about Total Excess, or there's still time to live it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful compilation of his work. So recommend you check it out. And again, thank you all for joining.